What's going on there, YouTube, and welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, so we are going to continue our coverage over Spawn for Spawn Sundays, and we pick up with Spawn issues number 73, 74, and 75, a three-part story arc where we kind of learn what could be the possible purpose of Spawn being on Earth. Now, go ahead and diving into today's storyline. We pick up with Sam and Twitch. Now remember, Sam and Twitch used to work for the NYPD, but unfortunately, they were fired because they were trying to prove that their boss was actually a crooked cop. Now, they were able to prove it, but again, they already lost their jobs. Now, once they did prove it, and their boss, well, he did commit suicide. But after all of that right there, they had decided to become private investigators. Now, over the last couple chapters, our two characters have been getting closer and closer to Spawn, all because of another character known as Cogliastro. Now, when it comes to Cogliastro, we still have no idea what his true origin is. All we know is that he planned to use Spawn as a way to kind of end the big war between heaven and hell. Now, when we do pick up with Sam and Twitch, they are just arriving back to their office, except as soon as they walk into their office, well, they're confronted by Cogliastro. And when it comes to Cogliastro, he's kind of like, listen, I told you guys that you guys have a huge connection to Spawn, that sooner or later Spawn is going to need you guys if he is going to achieve his actual purpose. And so this is Cogliastro saying, I need you guys to fully understand who Spawn is. And so he hands over a file that contains every single piece of information about Al Simmons before he was killed off and turned into Spawn. But we have to jump over to Rat City. Now remember, Rat City is kind of known like the rough area of New York, but it was claimed by Spawn to be his own territory. Now, Spawn did that as a way to protect the people of this area. Now, one of the characters that was able to build a bond with Spawn was actually Bobby. Now, when it comes to Bobby, he got stabbed in our last video, but he was saved by Bootsy, who's really an angel that was sent down to Earth to help pull off miracles for different people across the world. But unfortunately, he broke a huge rule in our last video, because right after Bobby got stabbed, Bootsy saved Bobby, and that is a huge no-no, because now Bootsy was kind of playing like a guardian angel. Now this is Bootsy trying to tell Bobby like, hey man, listen, something big is about to come very soon, and I want to make sure that one, you are protected, but two, if you're not protected, I want to tell you, you were a very close friend of mine. And that really shows why Bootsy did save Bobby in our last video, why he went ahead and broke that rule, even though he knew there'll be a huge punishment coming after that when he actually did it. But while you have Bootsy talking to Bobby, that is when he is confronted by Cogliastro. Now, when it comes to Cogliastro, he does tell Bootsy that the huge big war between heaven and hell is about to come very soon, except there is another problem, because that war is only going to start if something bad happens to Spawn, meaning that if Spawn dies, that is when heaven and hell will fight against each other. But you also have Cogliastro mention the idea there is a third party out there who could be involved with this war. The problem is though, we have no idea who this third party is. We then pick up with a character known as Eddie Beckett. Now, when it comes to Eddie Beckett, we also saw him in our last video. Now, in our last video, Eddie found a huge pile of necroplasm. Now, remember, necroplasm is technically used as a way to give Spawn the ability to use his powers. It's inside Spawn's body. Now, in our last video, Spawn got his head blown off. Now, when that happened, he left behind a huge chunk of necroplasm that Eddie found. Now, when we do pick up with Eddie, he is currently meeting up with some random shop owner, and they have a deal between each other where Eddie gives this guy different kinds of information that could help this owner out in different kinds of ways. And every single time Eddie is able to share information, the owner of the shop will give Eddie different kind of items from his shop. Unfortunately, Eddie has no information at all. And so the shop owner is beginning to get very upset because apparently the last couple times Eddie has shown up, he had no information for the shop owner. And so when Eddie leaves, the shop owner's son tells his father, hey, I heard that Eddie is actually holding out on us, that he has some big time information, but unfortunately, he's not telling us that information. And so you have the shop owner and his son get very upset. Also the wife as well. Either way, you have the son tell his dad, I'll go and talk to Eddie and get that information out of him. And so you do have the shop owner's son actually confront Eddie. Now, when he does, this is the shop owner's son saying, hey, we got word that you are holding out on us. What do you know that we do not know? But unfortunately, Eddie has no idea what he is talking about because Eddie has no information at all. And so to save his own life, you do have Eddie show the shop owner's son the pile of necroplasm that he had found. Now, as soon as the shop owner's son sees the pile of necroplasm, it looks like snot to him. And so he thinks that Eddie is playing games with him. And so you actually have the shop owner's son stab Eddie, which of course begins the process of slowly killing him off. Now, the shop owner's son does walk away, and you have Eddie just laying there in the middle of Rat City, just bleeding out. But unfortunately, he's not technically dead just yet. As a matter of fact, when it comes to the pile of necroplasm, it begins to move its way over to Eddie. It begins to take over Eddie's body. It begins to morph Eddie's body into some kind of creature. And so in reality, Eddie is dead. But either way, now the necroplasm is turning Eddie into some kind of monster, which of course, this monster is going to be used as a way to attack Spawn. Now you do have Spawn arrive back to Rat City. Now when he does, he is looking for Bootsy because in our last video, Bootsy did tell Spawn they have to talk. Unfortunately, when Spawn comes back, he only finds Bobby. And Bobby tells Spawn that Bootsy and Cagliostro went over to the Dead Zone. Now remember, Dead Zones are technically heaven patches. Heaven patches are like these certain areas across the world where Spawn powers does not work properly, or really at all. And so if he goes into one of those heaven patches, his powers are turned off completely. And the reason why, because his powers come from hell. Either way, if Bootsy and Cagliostro are in a heavens patch, that means Spawn powers are not going to work there at all. But either way, you do have Spawn go over there to hopefully find Bootsy, except he does not find Bootsy. Instead, he finds Eddie, who was just recently turned into some kind of creature that's now coming after Spawn. We then pick up with Bootsy. Now when we do, apparently Bootsy and Cagliostro had went their separate ways earlier, but either way, you have Bootsy coming to Cagliostro about the idea that something big is about to come that could affect both heaven and hell. But the thing is, they have to find Spawn because Spawn is the key that could affect both heaven and hell in the long run. And so you have our two characters begin a search for Spawn. Except Bootsy also heard that Spawn went into a heavens patch, which of course makes them even more worried. Except when they do find Spawn, he's being absorbed by Eddie, who was just turned into a creature recently. We then get into Spawn number 74, where we pick up with Sam and Twitch. Now when we do, it's Sam and Twitch currently going over the files that was given to them by Cagliostro that is going to help them get a better understanding of who Spawn is, who Al Simmons is. Matter of fact, this is where they learn that Spawn's real name, or was his real name, which was Al Simmons. Now while going through the files, they begin to realize that Spawn has a lot of connections to people they also know. So for example, their old boss, Chair Fanks. Also, Billy Kincaid, the child serial killer. Jason Wynn, the guy who is responsible for the death of Al Simmons 5 years ago. They don't stop there because they also get the chance to know Wanda, the ex-wife of Spawn, who also got remarried to his old best friend, Terry. they are getting the chance to know everything about Spawn, his entire life. Now, after going through the files, they believe they have enough information to bring Spawn in. Now, on top of that, our two guys here, they begin to think that Spawn is some kind of zombie creature who is able to walk on Earth, some kind of hell creature, which honestly, they're not wrong, but at the same time, they're having a hard time believing that. Either way, they want to bring Spawn in for questions. We then jump back over to Spawn and Eddie. Now, while you have the two characters fighting against each other, I have to mention that Spawn is not winning this battle. Matter of fact, Spawn is losing the battle big time, because every single time he is able to do some kind of damage on Eddie, Eddie is able to heal himself up just like that. And so unfortunately, no matter what Spawn does, Eddie is able to continue to fight against Spawn. Now, Bootsy and Cagliostro, they're there as well, but they're trying to tell Spawn to get the heck out of there because Spawn has no idea what he is fighting. But unfortunately, Spawn keeps trying to fight against Eddie to the point where Eddie is able to just grab Spawn, put Spawn inside his body, and then him and Spawn both disappear just like that. And now you have both Cagliostro and Bootsy wondering where Spawn and also Eddie went off to. Now this is where we come to find out why Spawn is so important to both heaven and hell, where you have Bootsy tell us, the readers, but also Cagliostro, that when it comes to Spawn, if he dies, that means the war between heaven and hell will begin on Earth. But the thing is, if the war does start, heaven is going to lose very easily. And the reason why? Because hell was able to get enough souls to build up an army that's 10 times bigger than heaven's army. And so heaven will lose easily to hell if they do go to war. And so this is Bootsy trying to protect the people of heaven, but also the people of earth as well. Now, with all that being said, they're trying to find a sign to see if Spawn is dead or alive, except they find his sigil. And usually, if a hell spawn leaves behind their sigil, that usually means they are dead, which means Spawn could possibly be dead. If he is dead, that means the war between heaven and hell is about to begin. Now, something else to mention is that Cyan, the daughter of Wanda and Terry, of course the ex-wife of Spawn and Spawn's old best friend, who got together and they had a child. Now, when it came to Cyan, we realized in earlier videos that she has some kind of connection to Al Simmons, and that connection was a shoelace that she wears around her neck. The shoelace was on Spawn's face after he got badly injured in an earlier storyline. Either way, with him now supposedly dead, you have Cyan realize that Spawn is dead. Like, she has some kind of connection to him to realize that he is dead. And with her realizing that, Cyan, the daughter of Wanda and Terry, begins to get a tad bit upset because now Al Simmons is dead. We then see Spawn falling into some kind of abyss, and as he's falling, he realized that he's not dead, but he's not alive. It's kind of like he's in limbo possibly. Either way, he's then confronted by Eddie. Now, when it comes to Eddie, he was the creature that Spawn just fought against. But this is Eddie telling Spawn what happened to him, how he changed into that creature, which we already know how, because of necroplasm. But as soon as Eddie tells Spawn that, Spawn realized that once again, because of him, somebody else was affected. Either way, this is where you have Eddie begin to change. Now, when I say change, I really mean more of somebody or something begins to take over Eddie's body as a way to talk to Spawn and telling Spawn the hour of reckoning is about to begin. We need you to go towards the light, to go through the portal to understand who we are. Because once you know who we are, you will have a better understanding of why heaven and hell's war is a stupid war that could end everything across the earth. So go towards the light and you will learn everything you need to learn. We come to find out that Spawn has arrived at the Green World. Now, the Green World is the third party that everybody was scared about because heaven and hell are the other two. But the Green World is the Earth. It's a sentient planet. The Earth is alive. Basically, the Green World is Mother's nature. And so right now, it's very upset about the idea of the war between heaven and hell. And the reason why, because their battle could lead to Earth. When it does, it could damage the Earth. And so when it comes to the keeper, the protector of the Green World, he tells Spawn, hey man, listen, we just want peace. We want the Earth to stay alive and be healthy. But unfortunately, the battle between heaven and hell is going to ruin the Earth. And so this is where the keepers say, Spawn, you better find a way to stop the war. Because if you don't and the war begins, we will make sure the entire human race will be wiped out. Because if we do that, neither heaven nor hell will be able to get any more souls at all. And that will ruin both of their plans. And it's kind of like, yo, that's kind of wild. But again, it's the Green World, it's the keeper saying we have to do what we have to do as a way to protect our world, to protect the Earth. And heaven and hell is about to ruin that. And so Spawn, you are the key for both heaven and hell because you are the only person who has the ability to stop the war from actually coming. Now back on Earth, we kind of find out that Cyan is having another seizure. Now this could be tied into the idea that Spawn is no longer on Earth. Oh really, he is on Earth, but in the Green World. The Green World is kind of like heaven, also kind of like hell. It's another realm, but it's inside the Earth. Either way though, when it comes to Cyan, she cannot sense or detect Spawn. And so because the connection is lost, she's beginning to have another seizure, which of course has Wanda and Terry very worried about their daughter. Now, once you have the keeper give Spawn the message, he does send Spawn right back over to Earth. Well, technically, when it comes to Bootsy, he was able to break the sigil that was left behind on Earth, and that was kind of the way that brought Spawn back to Earth. Either way, once you have Spawn come back, they're very happy about the idea that, hey, Spawn is back, but Spawn can now continue the plan to hopefully stop the war between heaven and hell. Now here's the thing though, because we cannot forget, because Bootsy did do some rule breaking earlier in our last video, the other angels from heaven come down to take him away for his punishment. Now, before he leaves, he does tell Spawn, the key for your victory is the child. Now, he does not tell us who that child is, but we're left to believe the child is no other than Cyan, because she is the only child that we have been seeing around, which means she could be the key that could help Spawn stop the war between heaven and hell. But the book ends with Bootsy being taken away, but also Spawn now wondering who that child could possibly be. But this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.